You are listening to episode 97 of The Secular Buddhist. Welcome to The Secular Buddhist. I'm Ted Meissner. The Secular Buddhist is the official podcast of the Secular Buddhist Association, a grassroots-driven effort to answer the needs of secular teaching and practice for contemporary society. The podcast has interviews and roundtable discussions pertaining to engaged Buddhist training and practice, and the SBA website has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Though the podcast focuses on core practice from a secular viewpoint, more traditional teachings are welcome and openly discussed. Sweeping Zen founder Adam Tebbe joins us to speak about contemporary issues in Buddhism. Many of you have heard me say in the past, question with confidence. That is, we should foster the development of an environment to have open and free inquiry into our beliefs, even those deeply cherished. That idea, question with confidence, was put very well long ago by Thomas Jefferson, who said, question with boldness even the existence of a God, because, if there be one, he must more approve of the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear. Few people have represented the idea of free inquiry in our Buddhist practice as today's guest. Adam Tebbe is senior editor at The Buddhist Dispatch. He is also founder of Sweeping Zen and Kanonji Zen Retreat in Second Life, a sangha which hosts events from Buddhist clergy using the virtual technology of Second Life. He trained to become a licensed chemical dependency counselor, but found that he enjoys this work far better. Adam also does some news gathering for Buddha Dharma, the Practitioners Quarterly, owned by the Shambhala Sun Foundation. So, sit back, relax, and have a nice Dr. Pepper. How long has that been? And our guest today is Adam Tebbe. Adam, thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you for inviting me.
Folks have probably seen Adam's name on the web. He is the founder and developer and author of Sweeping Zen and the new site that he is starting, Buddhist Dispatch. We'll get to that in a little bit, but right now, Adam, tell us about your background, how you first encountered Buddhism and meditation.
Sure. Well, I was in my early 20s, and I had just gone... Well, I didn't know anything about the world at all.
None of us do it in our 20s.
No. Well, I still am struggling, you know. But I had, well, let me rewind there. I'll go over that real quickly because I've talked about it in my blog post. I kind of hid it for a while, but when I was 19 years old, I got incarcerated for some burglaries in the Cincinnati area here, and it was... went to jail and then prison. Well, it was technically a prison, but it was actually like a behavioral kind of. The objective was behavior modification sort of thing for felons, and it was, you know, you look back on something like that and you think people would think it's such a horrible experience, and it is a horrible experience because it's something, you know, I walk around with that felon for the rest of my life, but at the same time, it was exactly what I needed at the time because I still came out immature. I still came out arrogant and stupid and didn't know anything about the world, but it helped me a lot. It let me know that I actually, for one, like I could live for a year without drugs. That was like a revelation to me. I didn't think that
yeah,
would ever happen. And so that was like a breaking point for me there. But so after, you know, I got out and did some aftercare program and stuff, I met a girl and, you know, we lived together for a couple of years and as a lot of relationships are. There's like the honeymoon period, and then there's the end, and the end was not nearly as fun as the honeymoon.
It rarely is. Yeah.
Exactly, and so it was kind of I thought about this because I thought this is probably where we're going to start with this, how to frame it. And it's kind of there's usually two storylines of where people kind of encounter Buddhism, as it were, and it's kind of either it's something that took place in their life. It's usually always that. But some people will then say it was like a book or a teacher or something after that, you know? And so for me, it's kind of like two. It was the breakup, and I went through like a year of, really kind of hardcore depression, and just kind of, I went back to smoking marijuana daily, and, just things weren't working out for me. Imagine that, right? Uh, and so I my sister sent me Richard Wilhelm's translation of the Tao Te Ching, and it was a great translation. But the the one line that sticks out to me actually comes from Joseph Campbell quoting it on The Power of Myth, where he was like, he who knows does not know, he who knows he does not know knows, and that it's like been that became like my mantra. It was like it was so basic. It's such like a basic kind of principle that anybody who's involved in Buddhism or spirituality, like it's we're very familiar with it. But at that time, it was like the lid being ripped off. Uh, and so there was that, and then I started reading some of the books by actually a Jesuit priest named Anthony de Mello, who he wrote a book called Awareness, which was really powerful for me. He wrote it from like a really kind of non-religious standpoint because I really kind of needed that. I was interested in spirituality, but I was not interested in the Catholic upbringing of my youth, which never made sense to me at all. Um, and from there, The Compass of Zen by Zen Master Sung San, which was the one that really uh, did it for me. I mean, it was kind of, I often talk back on it. It was it almost sounds shabby that I'm referring to a book, but it's so often the entryway into this thing, and it just I remember just finding, and then of course I read all of his other books that I just could not find fault in really anything that he said, and it was just kind of like revelation after revelation after revelation, and it was and a lot of questioning and a lot of but I latched onto it in a very kind of unhealthy way, and I think a lot of people do initially because it kind of now all of a sudden I wanted to like share it with the world, share everything I found with the world, and now I'm going to cure it. And also I wanted to be that. I wanted to be the Zen master, because that was like attracted to me. It was like they've got all the answers. Everybody wants to come to them and get advice, and I was attracted to that. And now that thought frightens the hell out of me. Uh, I would never want to be be in that position of. No, I just wouldn't want to be in it. Uh, but at that time I was, and so being the generation that I'm in, I'm a web guy, and so I'm doing all these Buddhist forums and everything, and kind of playing Zen master, and you see a lot of people doing that these days. These days on different forums and stuff, like they'll have a little alias, and all of a sudden they're an enlightened Zen master from Japan or something. So there was a lot of there was some of that. Um, so it was kind of like it was something that had a deeply profound impact on me, the teachings themselves, but it was kind of like an exterior kind of persona that I was kind of putting off.
Yeah, it was fitting the clothes that you needed to wear something, and this was a cool new outfit, and it
Really
wasn't
cool.
sinking in yet.
And I really wanted one of those outfits, like
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
like one of those outfits. Um, because I was totally, I've heard James Ford, I think it was James Ford. He was talking about how uh, you know, a lot of people, maybe back in the 60s, but I was finding it even now here in the early 2000s, like where it was hard for me to like listen to a Westerner at first. It was much easier because there was like that mystique and
Right,
that
right.
mystery, you know.
That was the appeal.
That was the appeal, absolutely. It was something new, it was completely different, it was like something that I could, you know, nobody else is doing, you know. And that was part of the appeal, but also, frankly, it was just dead on. Like left and right, and that's why it could have been nice and unique and whatever, but if it wasn't dead on, I probably wouldn't have gravitated toward it. And it's just kind of been um, from then I've kind of just dabbled because and it, it's being here in Ohio, there are a couple of groups, but that does not mean that you necessarily they're for you. I know that some people would argue that, and I've tried them actually, but some people would argue that you just go with it. I don't believe in that idea. I actually think that you do have to be discerning about who you practice with, where you practice, because it's kind of like a job in a way. I mean, you kind of get in a track and then you're kind of in it. And if the teacher is unethical, or if the song is not healthy, or just any, or even just simple things where there's just like a constant friction of of personalities. Uh, Maybe that's something that somebody would say, well, hey, that's good because that's something you need to work through, but maybe it's just not helpful for you. And uh, so, look, I mean, it's hard because Buddhism in America is still relatively new, and it's kind of hard to for people who are not in California or New York or in these kind of hubs or Oregon to kind of find a place to practice with that's just not just a place that's near them, you know. So a teacher that they really want to practice with. And so, I've been lucky and I have found at the Toledo Zen Center, Jay Rinson White, he's with the Boundless Way Zen School. And I've only been up there once, but it and I got this. I don't want to bombard you with too much information here, but
Keep
you
it
know,
coming, brother.
but I got uh, recently I got a gifted car to me, and it was like 70,000 miles, and I was like real excited because I was like, finally, because my truck right now has like 200,000 miles on it, and I don't like to drive it long distances, so I was all excited because I was like, I'm going to be able to drive back and forth to the Toledo Zen Center, once a month or so, uh, to practice there with them and do some sesshin or something like that. And then I take it to the mechanic and it's unroadworthy. And
Nope.
yeah, I got scrap metal price for it. So at least I got something for it, um, but it kind of dampened that. But I'm in the midst of saving right now, so that's good for a new car. So that's the plan, is to go up there because I really was extremely impressed with the way that they run things up there. I mean, not just the way they run things, but like the healthiness of the community. It was just very apparent. Like everybody was very welcoming and very. Uh, uh, there was I had no feeling whatsoever that I had to like prove myself at all. And maybe that was partly me, but I think they had something to do with that as well. Like maybe I didn't care so much anymore about how good I sit or whatever else, but also I kind of felt like nobody did care. And so I didn't encounter that actually. I'll remove the name of the Zen Center that I'm talking about only because it's not important. But uh, like the first Zen Center I ever went to is like an introductory class, and it was a state away, and um, I just remember it being the talks themselves were good, but then there was no connection afterwards. There was no socializing. There was no. It was like I went up to the instructor afterwards, and I tried to kind of, I'm wide-eyed and kind of young and new at this, and so I wanted to talk to him, and I had all these uh, ideas about what my first experience was going to be like, and like we'll go out to coffee and we'll discuss Buddhism and like, because that's where I really wanted that. And I honestly, and there was none of that. And actually, there was kind of like a monotone kind of just kind of emotionless expression on his and some of the other people's faces. And it was kind of, I often just think back to that. And then I compare that with what I found with Rinsen up in Toledo. And it was like, uh, well, it's like, it's just two different approaches, but I think that that's the approach that Rinsen's taking. He's also doing a lot of stuff with like family practice, with bringing in like doing programs for children and stuff. And some people may kind of cringe at that, uh, but it's welcoming. It's kind of there. Sanghas probably should have like a welcoming committee or something. That's probably why people don't come back ever.
Something that builds community. I know there's a local Zen center here who noticed that people would come in, they'd do the intro class just like you're talking about, Adam, and they'd never come back most of the time.
Hmm.
And they're realizing that part of what people are looking for when they come in isn't just I want to be able to meditate and hit the zone. I want kensho or whatever it is, or relief from my suffering. They may not typically be at that place. Most people going in for an intro are just kind of curious about this. And is it a welcoming atmosphere, or is it Buddhist zombies? And what you're
Yeah,
describing in the other place is it's the zombies. They're there for the deep enlightenment, and it's not that there's anything wrong with that approach, but there needs to be the understanding that not everyone is going to resonate with that, and they may be looking for a little more of the community that we see a little bit more of.
absolutely. And I don't want to even make uh, a diagnosis at all of anyone either. But it kind of like I was like, gosh, I don't want that. I don't want to turn into that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't I don't want that to become. I don't want to be the zombie. So I never went back. And and um, and then I did. There's a kind of a there's a teacherless sangha that gathers down in North Side here in Ohio, and I went there a couple of times, and it was nice, but it was a little bit nicer. But there was just this kind of strangeness to the whole social aspect that people would come early and we'd kind of sit there, but like nobody really knew what to say to each other, and it was kind of forced. But with up there, it was just I don't know. It's always hard to know. Like, is it you? Have you done some growth or something that uh maybe you're just not self-conscious anymore, or you're not. I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's that. I think that might be part of it, but I think that actually it's that it was just a really good sangha, and I'm really excited to go back up there.
cool.
So
Now, tell us about how you ended up developing and putting together Sweeping Zen, because that's how I first got to meet you, is through that and some of the articles that you were posting there. And I got to say, for people who are listening to the podcast who have not gone to the website yet for Sweeping Zen, go there. It's an awesome place.
mhm.
Adam, tell us about how that got started.
Sure, and keep coming here too because you've got a great place. But you've done the Second Life thing, is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. We've had a number of locations we've gone to. And interestingly enough, on the Resources Practice Centers page, I've got a virtual communities section,
Uh huh.
and I think yours is the Second Life Kanonji Zen Retreat.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
that
that's
that's
kind
the
of.
site. We've had that on since I started the virtual community listing.
Oh, very cool. Thank you so much.
Hey, no problem. Glad it's out there.
Yeah. Well, I don't do much. We don't do much with it anymore. It's just kind of, um, but to answer your question, and I'll get to that in a second. But um, it started out with the Second Life thing. It was kind of you know, I heard this story on NPR, and that's how a lot of people actually found it. There was like this big media push for Second Life all of a sudden, and actually I was resistant because I knew me and I know how I am with things, and I was like, I might actually get like really obsessive with this thing. Like
Yeah.
I might really go kind of far, and actually I kind of did. Um, but I don't know how many months later it was, but I finally went in, and then within like 2 weeks or so, like I had like this temple built, and it was just really bizarre how it all kind of unfolded. It was like a game at first
Yeah, yeah.
in my mind, but then it turned into like this. Well, I used to call it Sangha. That's the best description I have for it. Uh, or if not that, I'd just say community. I mean, that was the strongest point of Second Life that I found. And then we were starting to bring a lot of teachers in that would come and give like Dharma talks to like virtual audiences with their virtual avatar, and like it was pretty cool, but at the same time, sometimes and I know that they believed in it, and I believed in it too. I think it actually probably was helpful for a lot of people, but there was a feeling that we were kind of playing house, or uh, there's kind of like just this disconnect. Like I honestly do think that like something like Skype when we're doing video on video or something actually is like more intimate,
Yeah,
more
yeah.
more realistic or whatever. The others kind of and the whole Second Life thing as well is kind of there's a lot of people that are kind of hiding, uh, not just hiding, but just kind of I think sometimes it's very unhealthy. Uh, the way they kind of I think some people have put themselves in their avatars and they like become it, and that's all they day long.
We would have talks in some of the Second Life, the skeptical Buddhists uh, place that we have set up, and a few others where I'd be in this talk that we'd be having about a particular topic, mindfulness or meditation or something,
Mhm.
and people are really good about participating in that. And it would be text; we wouldn't use the audio, and it would be great. And every now and then we get someone coming in whose avatar is just kind of different. We'll put it that way. Let's just say it's different. And that was always a little off-putting to me, as I'm used to going into virtual reality types of online things to shoot stuff. That's my background. It's just how I know that
Right.
kind of environment where you're running around with an avatar. And so to have it where I know they're like MIT and different universities have classes there, and that's really cool, and that's a benefit. That's something to investigate for our kind of practice. It would be terrific, but we still see a little more of the creation of persona that is maybe not always so helpful to the individual.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, even if I use their names, they're just an anonymous avatar, frankly. But
Right, right.
I've known a couple people who they and I did it for a while actually myself, but they literally spend all day long in there, and and I get it. I spend all day long working sometimes, and I get it. I mean, fun, work, play, whatever. But uh, I don't know. There's a fine line between healthy and unhealthy, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes have to pull myself away from the computer these days because it it sucks up so much of my time. So I started that, and then I it wasn't going anywhere. This is before we started bringing the teachers in, and so I was ready to kind of give up the place, and so I just let a couple of other people that were involved just kind of take it over, and I just was kind of done with it. And so then I started doing well, I don't know how long it was exactly, but it was in May of 2009, and I just started. It started out with like a GoDaddy like I don't know what a website tonight thing I guess it was, where it's like really clunky software and really kind of awkward. But I started doing like this uh, biographical database of Zen teachers. That's how it started out. Not even sure why I did it. Like, it was kind of well, I do know why because before I came to Second Life, I was doing a good couple years worth of like a lot of editing on Wikipedia for anything related to Zen centers, Zen teachers, Zen history, that sort of thing. And I liked it a lot. And so I kind of uh, that was kind of the idea behind it is to kind of make it like a an encyclopedia, not a Wikipedia, but an encyclopedia of Zen. And I said that the natural starting point is to do these biographies. And so then I noticed that I needed a new website, and we went through that, and It's growing and growing. It's a niche site, so it's kind of it has an appeal, and I think that there's still more people finding it and that sort of thing. But it's hard to make a go of it because, as we were talking about before we started the interview, was kind of I did not start this thing with any sort of financial ideas or anything. It was just kind of like a hobby. But then, like I said, I fell in love with the work, and I just kind of I realized like I don't want to be a chemical dependency counselor. I want to do this with my life. And so then it became a matter of like, okay, well then how do I do that? How do I make money at doing this without like alienating people and uh, charging for content and that sort of thing? And so that's been a challenge, but I still love doing it, and and that's kind of why I started that other website too. Um,
Yeah, let's talk about that because that's a new thing that's just coming up.
mhm,
Buddhist Dispatch, and
mhm.
this is it's different in content from what Sweeping Zen is about. Tell us about Buddhist Dispatch and what prompted you to start that.
It is. It's pretty much going to be just a news-oriented site, although there's probably going to be probably a few other features. I don't know. I mean, it's the way the websites usually unfold, and I'm sure you've seen it. It's kind of organic, you know.
Yep.
It's kind of like,
Yes.
you need something, you'd put it in there, and there it is. And so who knows where it'll go? But the concept is to just literally not to publish stuff that's like irrelevant or well, what is relevant or irrelevant? That's like kind of like the question, but
Hmm. Hmm.
not to publish anything that's like, I don't know. Oprah Winfrey mentioned Buddhism on her show. Like that's a stupid story, but like something that has some substance to it, like we want to cover it.
Yeah, it's not
That's
just trying to validate. Look, look, validation. Buddhism got
right,
mentioned somewhere. It's
right,
no. What are? How is this actually making a material change in the world? How is this impacting people?
absolutely that, and uh, Zen Center profile. Any, not just Zen, of course, but that's what first pops into my mind because that's like been my thing for this whole damn time. But just want to cover everything. So Vajrayana and Mahayana, and I've always kind of been confused because they are kind of it is under Mahayana, but so I'm going to be learning a
Yeah.
lot through all of this. Uh, and I'm just that's what I found. I found through Sweeping Zen that I learned so much,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to that as well. Like of just being if with my eyeballs in the news and now we're bringing on editors, you're going to be an editor there, and there's a couple other people that are going to be editors there. That Lawrence Greco and a couple of others who I'm really excited about, who are just going to kind of bring different perspectives, uh, who have different specialty areas, like you with the meditation science, um, and I'll be able to cover the Zen part pretty well, and we'll be able to cover a lot of other things too. So it's going to be that's the focus of the website right now. It's just kind of the generic idea, and the why behind it was uh, I saw kind of a gap. Yes, there's a lot of Buddhist news out there, and a lot of good ones. I'm working kind of freelance right now for Buddha Dharma, doing a little bit of news gathering for them and stuff, and they do a terrific job at it and everything. But I just started to. There were just some stories that I want to get out there that I couldn't through the venue of Sweeping Zen just because it just didn't fit uh, at all. And so it's kind of like that, and also again the financial thing too is kind of the idea of you kind of need to build probably more for something as niche as Sweeping Zen. I'm finding you're probably never going to get enough audience to support yourself. But something like this, I'm just being 100% blunt with you. So that's
And I
just kind of
appreciate that.
yeah, right. So I mean, some people may gawk at what I'm saying. I don't think so. I think most people understand that people have to make a living. Uh, and y- I am passionate about it, and I do love it a lot. But yeah, there's that financial aspect too, where I'm thinking, never a thing where I want to charge people anything for. content or anything like that, but it'd just be like advertising revenue and that kind of thing. So that's the idea, and I think it'll actually we'll see, but I think it's actually going to take off. So
I'm amazed by the amount of content that you've already got out there right now on stories that are really quite topical. And there are some other Buddhist news gathering kinds of sites, but the thing that I particularly like about Buddhist Dispatch is that the way you've got it set up, this being a WordPress install, is that you can talk a little bit about what the particular story is, link to the original, and go from there. It's not just a here's the scrape. It's here are a few words by people who are familiar with this subject category talking about what actually is this. And
right.
that's something I don't see in the other sites that you've got here, which is really nice to see.
Although I will say that, and I thank you for that, but I will say that at Buddha Dharma, actually, uh, we kind of do the same thing. Although it's kind of um, it's far more selective, is all I'll say. And I think that's actually an asset. I think that everybody does a different has a different style and a different has a different approach to the way they're doing it. It's been kind of the same way with Sweeping Zen. I've always like thought big, and so it's kind of like really big. It's kind of scary sometimes. I've never been diagnosed, but I've kind of self-diagnosed myself. I think I'm probably manic a bit, uh, in that if I get into something or if I'm doing some work, it's kind of like when I'm painting or something. It's just sort of everything else drops away, and I can go at it for hour after hour after hour, not even eating, not doing anything, and probably not the healthiest thing, but it also produces a whole lot of content. That's for sure. Uh, so I
Now,
don't know.
something else I wanted to ask you about so we can chat about it for a few minutes, and this was one of the first encounters I had with you on Sweeping Zen.
Hmm.
Really, there are two different subjects. One, and this is a segue from what you're doing, which is trying to make a living off of this without directly charging people for what you've got. I know you and I had a very similar response to, and we'll leave this nameless, but a Buddhist conference that they're charging what seemed kind of high
Hmm.
as an admission price. And
Sure.
what conflicted for me with that is, I've been my Buddhist life raised with the Buddha Dhamma is free, and this is a matter of availability, and so it was very strange for me to see that kind of thing. And I know you had a similar reaction. I was wondering if you'd be willing to talk for a couple minutes about that.
Sure. I did have that, but as far as least as I understand it, is that they actually broke even in the end,
They did, yeah, they
uh,
did. Yep.
financially, and so it's kind of, uh, yeah, it does kind of rub me wrong a little bit, but at the same time, it's kind of like that's sort of the reality we're in here. Uh, on- if that is, it's considered someone's quote job.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, yeah,
there's a
and it
lot.
is. They're making a living off of this.
Exactly. Well, not necessarily off of the conference itself, but of
The overall
there's a
efforts of
lot.
what they're doing. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And one part of me uh doesn't like it, and the other part of me is like, well, there's people out there who are willing to pay that. Uh I'm not of that mantra like, well, then charge anything. Like we'll go well, some retreats that were costing $50,000, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh Right. That's like no. Sorry. Like that's in the realm of absurd. But um it was high, but it wasn't like when you really think about it, it wasn't like California high, as it were. Um but it's always a dicey issue. It's kind of because Buddhists are really especially Zen folks, but I think every of all stars and stripes, we tend to be very critical people, you know. We tend to we should be, I think at least, like very skeptical and very kind of we're kind of always looking for what's the angle here, you know. And so like when money is involved, I think a lot of times uh that skeptic comes out even more. And people kind of are looking for like, well, what's the agenda? Like, what are they trying to do here? And I think it is altruistic, and I think that they, there's something to be said for like the marketing of Buddhism, I guess. But it's again, it's a fine line, and it's kind of you got to do it well, and it you don't want to be too flashy about it, in my opinion.
One of the concerns I've had with uh, tickets to events, whatever kind of events, not just Buddhist ones, but other kinds of conferences as well, where it's $500 at the door. That's a
Hmm.
chunk, and there's some financial discouragement there if people can't afford that, let alone getting out there, let alone staying somewhere. It adds up, and that's maybe outside of some folks' means, and I get concerned that then also continues the challenge we have of being a practice for folks who are more financially comfortable or affluent, and
Sure.
those who are more challenged by that can't afford it. And
Sometimes just retreat prices alone are kind of a discouragement. Even when they are a discouragement to me, Frank. I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination, and uh, you know, $150 retreat meant that's reasonable. It is reasonable in retreat terms. Uh, you probably can't get that price for a lot of different things, especially for like a weekend stay somewhere. But still, for some people on different income levels, they can't do that. And and even though like the good sanghas, I'll call them, often will put on there, nobody will be turned away. Uh, any donation will be accepted, but this is the recommended one or whatever. Even that's kind of a discouragement in a way. Like I know you have to set the price. I understand that. Because you got to like make your ends meet at the end. But because then it kind of makes it makes you feel like you're a burden. It makes a person feel, at least for me, I'll say that, like, I've never done that. I've never done like a scholarship type thing or anything like that because it's kind of, you feel like you're somehow using them or like you're not contributing the way that you're supposed to.
yeah, we're a very self-critical people, and in the West, and we are raised with this idea of independence and taking care of ourselves.
Mm.
And I'm thinking we need to get over that in a lot of different situations that we're not used to doing it in. That we are in a different environment than perhaps some of our forefathers who were able to just take care of everything themselves. And you have the traditional one breadwinner of the family. That's
Yeah.
not our world these days. You need everyone in the house to have an income to help out, and especially where we are with our current unemployment rate and the way the finances of the country are. It's a challenge, and we maybe need to be able to reach out to each other for that and be okay with it.
Absolutely. And sometimes it just brings what we're talking about here like brings up a lot of different things because there's a lot of Zen centers because I'm talking about Zen because that's like what I cover and that's what my interest area is and that's what I consider I practice. Uh, but it's sometimes, and you see it not just with Zen centers, but you see it everywhere. Like these very elaborate, beautiful structures, buildings, which cost obviously, and on like huge amounts of acreage, right, out in like remote areas that are beautiful, and that costs a lot of money. Uh, to keep up, to have purchased to begin with, and it's kind of I see it, I understand like that everybody needs to kind of like go to an oasis kind of every once in a while to sort of get away and everything, but like, you know, thank God, all I'll say is thank God for like the little city centers, that just kind of
Mm-hmm.
hang out in the office buildings. And yeah, they try their best to decorate it well and to make it look nice, but it's not much. But that's not what you should be going there for. You shouldn't be going there for the bells and whistles. You should be going there for me at least. It's about the community, really. I mean because that's what I'm trying to learn is how to get how do I fit in with the world and how do I interact with it, and not how do I interact with toys,
Right.
you
And
know?
that actually leads to another topic I wanted us to chat about. And this is another thing that you have discussed on Sweeping Zen. And our friend Scott Edelstein has written a book on this topic as well. And we're seeing it right now, actively right now with a certain center that we have had some misbehaviors. We'll open the door to the discussion that way by teachers, by people who are in authority. And
Sure.
we've experienced this. Minnesota Zen Meditation Center was just coming out of these events when I joined. So my first experience with Zen was this very challenging time that the center was going through. I was wondering what your thoughts were on some of the things you've seen in different kinds of reactions people have to people behaving badly that you hopefully expect wouldn't behave badly.
Um, well, the one thing I'll say is I don't know. Well, I think I know what you're talking about there. That specific with your center there when you first came to Zen, and of course, there's been these couple of other ones with Genpo Roshi and Edo Shimano, and honestly, what I found, I'm glad that all these teachers came out and spoke out against it, but and I'm guilty at this too. There's others, and they're now I don't want to paint a picture like it's a whole lot, like it's everywhere, it's rampant or whatever, but there's others, and there's uh serious kind of stuff going on, but it's kind of like where I feel like I'm stuck is that well, I can't publish it if nobody's gone on the record, and I can't because that's just straight slander, you know. Uh, I can't really put myself in that position to be held liable. Um, so I've always kind of been torn with that, where I feel like I'm maybe uh, not doing a good job, you know. But so sometimes I wish, you know, I see the Zen teachers. They came out and they wrote all these letters, and again, I think it was heartfelt, and I think a lot of them meant what they said, and and some of them had been saying it over the years many times. But really wasn't like an audience for it. There was nowhere to really put it. Uh, and frankly, there were probably some the publications that just wouldn't run it. Um, and so because in Buddhist publications, there's this tendency to like make it all inspirational and kind of what I mean. Like it's all got to make you feel good and make you want to keep on coming back. Um, but then people don't experience that. That's not the reality of what's going on. And so I only wish that the teachers out there that know of these teachers who are kind of predatory, should speak out and not wait until it's too late. Because you know, I don't I have my hands in things. I have my I hear these things off the record all the time. And again, it's not a huge amount. It's always like a couple of names that keep coming up. But it's kind of uh, why sit on it? Why are you sitting on it? What it's gonna you they understand. I hope it's probably gonna come out at some point, and then once again we're gonna go through this whole thing. Just but it's difficult. It's a difficult position to be in because if you're that lone wolf, you know, uh, well, you're out at the firing squad, and if nobody else comes out to back you up, um, I'm making it sound like some drastic, like trial or whatever, but because really what we're talking about here it is abuse, but also there's that other part of it where like we're talking about like consenting adults a lot of times in these things where, and I can understand it. I mean, I can understand why people would say, what's the big deal? Like, I have my faults, and I have sexual partners and everything else, and it's just kind of, um, to me, it's just the same thing as like the ethics of a counselor or of any kind of professional. And there's a lot of teachers that don't want to be considered a professional. I don't know why. Only in that because the in Western society, like that's how we view things. Like if somebody doesn't have a credential or like they're not a professional, like who are they then? Um, it doesn't work the same way as it did in like it does in Japan or well, it's not working in Japan either, but not right now. It did historically, but there's not a lot of young people going in to practice Buddhism in Japan these days. It's more just kind of like Christianity here, where you're born into it and you just kind of I don't know, inherit your father's temple. It's a little different than here, but I mean, you kind of go through the motions a bit. Here in Western society, like most of us, almost all of us, are probably converts of some sort, either from no religion,
Yeah,
we had no
that's me.
religious
Yep.
upbringing. That was you. I knew that was you. Or like me with my Catholic upbringing, where I just found no relationship to it, and so there's that. And so I got a little sidetracked, but generally speaking, that's what I've observed. That's my big observation is that I only wish that some of these people who know this information would, even if they didn't do it publicly, do something about it, because it's it's horrible for not just the reputation of everything. It's not about like because we're not like evangelizing. It's like people, if they find the truth in the teachings, they're going to find the truth in the teachings. But um, it's damaging to people, to flesh and blood people. Like that's the problem.
Yeah, we're
It's not
supposed to be reducing suffering here. Step up and reduce
absolutely
suffering.
right, and it's not just the sexual partner or not. It's not all just about sex or the person being financially exploited, or it's not just about those things. It's about the sangha that just gets ripped apart uh, in the middle of it all, and then it's like so many other abuses of authority that we see in the world, where the shop shuts down and they pop up somewhere else.
Right. Yeah,
And
exactly. We're seeing that now as an
yeah,
attempt in this situation.
well, it attempts at doing it. Hopefully, it won't be successful.
We'll see where that goes. Yeah.
Yep.
Our guest today has been Adam Tebbe. You can find Adam two locations, Sweeping Zen, and that's at sweepingzen.com, and the news site, Buddhist Dispatch, and the address of that is thebuddhistdispatch.com. Adam, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much. It was a fun conversation.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the SBA website at www.secularbuddhistassociation.com, and you'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. Discussion about this episode can be found on the episode page itself, along with show notes. The music for The Secular Buddhist is used by permission from John Kaiser Neptune CD Steps in Time. Additional music is provided courtesy of Monty Levinson of Taihei Shakuhachi and Rodrigo Rodriguez. Their websites are linked on the SBA site on the About Podcast Music page. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on The Secular Buddhist.